Just recently I covered the timeline of the first game, so if you haven't yet seen that video, go check it out now to get caught up. But this week, we're going to dive into arguably the most popular game in the entire series, Fatal Frame 2. This time, we have a brand new story in a brand new setting, with brand new characters, but there are still plenty of ties to the first game, as we'll soon see. The events of this game are a little harder to pinpoint exactly, however, as we have less exact dates to work with, leading to a lot more maths and guesswork from what we do know. At any rate, once again, I'll be primarily working with what the original Japanese games and official guides give us. So, without further ado, let's head in and see what happens, and when, in Minakami Village. So, if you've played the game, then you'll know that the Crimson Sacrifice ritual is the big thing that happens in Minakami Village. This is a ritual that takes place with twins generally around the age of 15, although exceptions can be made when necessary. And in short, ends with the elder twin strangling the younger twin. After being strangled, a mark like a crimson butterfly forms on the younger twin's neck, and their soul goes on to protect the village. Now, it's unknown how long this has been going on for, but it tends to take place once every few decades, with an emergency ritual taking place a year or so later, in the rare cases where it fails. It doesn't appear to be on a strict schedule like the strangling ritual from the first game, however, so we can't use it to exactly pinpoint dates. We're told of several sets of twins who successfully took part in the ritual, such as the Kurosawa twins, the Osaka twins, and the Kiryu twins. Kurosawa Ryokan, father of Sae and Yae. Yes, the same Yae from Fatal Frame 1, who gave birth to Mikoto, Hinasaki Miku's grandmother, successfully took part in the ritual with his own twin brother when he was younger. Again, we don't have a strict date for this, but if we do some crazy math and extrapolate from Sae and Yae's possible year of birth, and assume that he was, say, mid-20s or so when they were born, then we go back to his possible date of birth and add 15 years to that, the age twins generally are when the ritual takes place. Well, his Crimson Sacrifice ritual probably took place in the mid-1880s. Probably. If he and his wife had the girls later in life, then this ritual perhaps took place in the mid-1870s instead. Either way, when he grew up, he became the ceremony master, who presided over the ritual with Tachibana Itsuki and Mutsuki. That then failed. The boys simply loved each other too much. Because of this failure, an emergency ritual then had to take place the following year, and Ryokan's own twin daughters, Sae and Yae, were the ones who had to take their place. Now, we know that Mikoto from Fatal Frame 1 was likely born sometime in the 1920s, probably somewhere around the middle. We sadly don't have exact dates, however, so it's all guesswork, and it's important to keep that in mind. Considering the time period, Yae was probably in her 20s or so when she gave birth, meaning she herself was likely born sometime around the turn of the century. However, we can't rule out that she was perhaps a little older when she gave birth as well. So there's a good chance she was born in the late 1800s. This is important because we're not given any solid dates for when the tragedy of the Repentance, the event that wiped out Minakami Village, took place. But we do know how old Sae and Yae were when it happened. They were 15. So, if they were born in the 1890s, then the repentance would have happened around 1905. If they were born around 1900, then it would have taken place around 1915. We also know that Dr. Aso was alive when it happened. He likely died sometime around the middle of the 1910s. And we were repeatedly told that the repentance took place during the Meiji period, which ended in 1912. So, we can assume it probably happened somewhere around 1910. But keep in mind, there is no official confirmation anywhere about this exact year that it happened. But if so, then Saya and Yae were likely born in 1895. One interesting date we do have, although it doesn't really change much, is that Makabe Seijiro, a folklorist who visits the village, makes note of a law recently passed by the Japanese government that rules that first-born twins are considered the oldest, and the twin born second is the youngest. This was designed to settle inheritance disputes, but in Minakami, they continue to believe what they've always believed. The elder twin is actually the twin born second, because they are stronger and they allow the younger and weaker twin to be born first. Now, the date of this law is December 13th, 1874. He refers to it as recent, but we can't say how recent, and he could be generalizing. Perhaps he means recent as in the grand scheme of history. Perhaps he means actually recent as in the last few years. Timeline-wise, it makes more sense to be a general recent, but it's something to keep in mind. So, if we assume that the repentance took place in 1910, then 10 years before that, around 1900, Munakata Ryozo visits Minakami village as a child with his father, a peddler. He would have been around 6 or so at the time, and he notes that the villagers don't seem to like outsiders. However, he befriends the Tachibana twins, Itsuki and Mutsuki, and they're around the same age. They share tales of the village while he shares tales of the outside world, and it's here that he learns of a festival involving twins that takes place in the village every few years. Now, the year before the repentance, so probably around 1909, 9 years after Munakata's visit, Itsuki and Mutsuki take part in the Crimson Sacrifice ritual. But because of their bond with each other, they're unsuccessful. As such, an emergency ritual needs to be carried out the following year, and Sae and Yae are next in line. During these 9 years, Munakata kept in contact with the Tachibana twins, and the following year, so around 1910, he suddenly gets a letter from Itsuki asking him to come back and take Yae and Sae away from the village. They're going to be involved in the next festival, but Munakata is confused as to why Itsuki is requesting this of him. Is the festival dangerous? Being just a teen, he doesn't have the money to travel there, but he brings it up with the folklorist Makabe Seijiro, whom he now works for as an apprentice. Makabe is interested and agrees to go. Makabe and Munakata arrive at the village shortly thereafter, and Makabe brings with him various items from Dr. Aso, a friend of his. A camera, a projector, and a spirit stone radio. The pair stay with the Kurosawa family, but unfortunately for all involved, the hellish abyss has been, well, angry in recent times, due to the failed ritual the year before. And so, Ryokan decides some rather drastic measures must be taken. He'll turn Makabe into a kusabi. This is a human sacrifice designed to appease the abyss, and hopefully hold everyone over until they can carry out the Crimson Sacrifice ritual again. Makabe starts to cotton on to the fact something terrible is happening here, and sends Munakata away. He accepts his fate, and is even somewhat excited to see what's going on firsthand. Munakata is made to leave, but he promises Yae he'll return for her. Makabe then becomes a sacrifice, but it's still not enough. Itsuki then helps Yae and Sae escape, but he's captured and he ends his own life. Sae then trips in the forest as the girls run. She assumes Yae will come back for her, but she doesn't. Instead, Yae gets lost. Sae is taken back to the village, and they try to carry out the ritual without Yae. Naturally, it fails. Badly. And the repentance happens. Minakami village is swallowed by darkness. Sae and Makabe are twisted by it, and together they wipe out the village. They kill almost everyone, and those who survive end up taking their own lives or are driven completely and utterly mad. Minakami village is wiped off the maps, trapped in an endless night where the ghosts live in an endless loop of pain, and those unfortunate souls who find themselves in the village end up joining them in an incredibly painful afterlife. True to his word, Munakata returns shortly after the repentance, and he finds Yae, now without her memories, crying at the gate to the village that is now gone. He takes her away and cares for her, and eventually they get married and take part in what happened in the Fatal Frame 1 timeline. Now, with Minakami village trapped in an eternal night thanks to the repentance, people whisper how you can hear Sae's maniacal laughter beyond the village. Earthquakes continue in the area, causing more and more darkness to spill forth. The village is forever covered in darkness and fog, and rumours begin to spread that any who enter the forest outside the village are forever lost. They are spirited away. Fast forward a few decades. In 1973, Amakura Mio and Mayu are born. Mio is the younger, Mayu is the elder. Both their parents grew up not too far from Minakami village, with their father, Misao, being a descendant of Dr. Aso. Their mother, Shizu, is the older sister of Amakura Kei, who is good friends with Mafuyu from the first game, and Aso Yu from the third, another descendant of Dr. Aso. Yes, all these characters are related in a very complex web. At any rate, Misao went missing in the woods outside Minakami village when Mio and Mayu were still young, and ends up being trapped in the village as well. Shizu warns the girls never to play in those woods after that, but of course they often do. One day, Mayu badly injures her leg while they're playing there, and this leaves her with a bad limp thereafter. Perhaps terrified that her children might also disappear like her husband did, Shizu then moves the family away, and Mio is left feeling guilty about her sister's injury. Now, sometime in 1987, work begins on the Minakami Dam not too far from Minakami village. Makimura Masumi heads out to survey the area, but unfortunately he's also spirited away into the village. Articles are printed on his disappearance, but the police quickly call the search off. His girlfriend, Sudo Miyako, decides to keep looking for him herself, and while in the forest, she too is spirited away. She does eventually find her boyfriend, however, but unfortunately, both meet a tragic fate. The search for both is eventually called off, and construction on the dam continues. After all, one missing surveyor and his girlfriend is hardly enough to call off an entire dam project. Shizu hears that the dam is soon to be finished, and the forest near Minakami village will soon be flooded. She decides to head back with the twins to see it one last time in July 1988. It was, after all, where their father went missing, and the area where they grew up. And so, we're led to the events that take place as you play through the game. As the twins play in the forest, reminiscing about their past, Mayu follows a crimson butterfly that leads her towards the village. Mio follows her, and they find themselves in front of Minakami. And so the main content of the game begins. Again, I won't spell out step by step what happens in the game because I do plan to make full story videos at a later point, but I'll very quickly sum it up. And yes, there are spoilers here if you haven't played this 20-plus-year-old game. Mio and Mayu uncover a lot of the timeline we just discussed while searching the village. The girls are separated and reunited at various points, and it becomes more and more apparent they're going to have to carry out the Crimson Sacrifice ritual to finally appease the Abyss. They also discover that in Minakami village, the firstborn is actually considered to be the youngest, which means that Mio, who was born second, is going to have to kill her sister, Mayu, who was born first. And so she does. Mayu's body is thrown into the abyss, it is sated, and a crimson butterfly flies out. They have defeated the evil, but at what cost? As we later discover in Fatal Frame 3, Mio was found a week after going missing, collapsed in the middle of the forest. She was then taken to the hospital, but due to extreme fatigue, she wasn't able to talk. And, sometime later, Mio overlooks the now finished dam. She has become a remaining after successfully carrying out the ritual, and the curse on the village has finally been lifted. The end. And that is the timeline of the second Fatal Frame game, starting all the way back in the 1800s and leading up to July 1988, meaning the main events of this game take place roughly 2 years after Fatal Frame 1. I will continue to cover the other games in later videos, but what did you guys think of this one? What is your favorite part of the second game, either from a lore or even gameplay perspective? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.